2007. We actually managed to take that whole province, not all of it was owned by the Tigers, with hardly any civilian casualties. There was only one allegation of civilian casualties in that whole campaign, and the government said it was because of mortar locating radar, and it was granted that the Tigers had moved their weapons into a refugee centre.
Yes.
So my
But
point
things changed in 2009.
no. Things did not change. It's just that the Tigers, that technique that they'd used once in the
using
East,
human shields.
using human shields. And what we find appalling and really very, very upsetting is that during the whole period of 2008 to 2009, you did not hear any voices demanding that the Tigers release their human shields unequivocally. Now, I'll give you a simple example. In 2007, the Norwegian ambassador told us the Tigers were recruiting one person per family. We knew that.
Forcibly recruiting.
Forcibly recruiting, of course.
I think everybody understands
I'm
that.
sorry, but you understand that I understand it. Why did the UN not report it? I told the head of the UN at the time, a new chap, I said, look, you have been tolerating this. And he said, no, we've complained about it. I said, show me one document. He called back and said, no, I'm sorry, these are all internal documents. You have to recognize...
Why didn't the UN at that stage
Precisely. Why did the head of UNICEF tolerate child recruitment? She came to me in 2007 and said, I've been up to Kilinochchi, they're going to release everyone under 17. I said, they promised that 5 years ago. What happened? Oh, they had some difficulties.
But the core of this issue, though, is I mean, you're effectively saying that was a wrong, yes, and it's recognised fully in this report.
No, it's not recognised. It's not recognised. The Tigers are blamed, the international community that did nothing. Nothing.
I agree, and it's said. The report also makes that clear that there ought to have been the numbers published, and
no. What the report condemns the UN for is not revealing figures that the panel takes to be true, which the UN have assured us were not certified figures. Now, the real worry about this report is that it ignores completely the failure of the UN up to 2007, 8, 9.
Yes, I can see that.
And it never mentions that.
Yeah.
It never mentions that. And our point is that whether it was because the Sri Lankan government before that had been soft-peddling Tiger atrocities because it was hoping for settlement or otherwise, the UN played ball. When I used to ask the UN why you haven't done ABC or why you gave money to a radio station that glorified suicide bombers, I have it in writing, they'd say it was with the permission of the government. Now, after 2008, when the Tigers were taking these human shields in, no one said anything about it. I have letters I've sent to NGOs saying, why didn't you protest? They have given what to me about excuse.
Why do you think the UN, this UN panel has failed to... I mean, they've mentioned it, but it isn't. It is not prominently portrayed.
Well, I'll give you a simple example. The UN panel thought it was set up as a war crimes tribunal, contrary to what the Secretary-General asked them to do. He asked them to advise him on accountability issues. The UN panel consists of people who wanted a war crimes tribunal. I can tell you that in 2009, some of what I call this international human rights, let's say mafia, had actually applied. One person wrote to the Canadian government, that came out in an internal problem of the Canadian government, saying, please nominate me to the war crimes tribunal that the Canadian government wants.
The UN Human Rights Council had a meeting on this. And it has been said in this report that it didn't have all the facts, and that it came to a decision that appeared to justify the all-out attack by the government forces on the Tamil Tigers. But they are now. The report now says, they didn't have all the facts, and they ought to go back.
So
and
the
start
panel
again.
has all the facts. The panel.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Well, can I tell you why I think the panel does not have all the facts? It is remarkably prejudiced for the reasons I've just given you. It actually perverts evidence. I'll give you one simple example. It makes allegations of rape and abuse. And one of the doctors who was there pointed this out to me. He said the footnotes refer to a UN Secretary-General's report. And this doctor went through the UN Secretary-General's report and said, but those paragraphs are about the LTTE. Now, if 3 people who claim to be academic cite in footnotes a report about the LTT suggesting it's about the Sri Lankan army, you begin to wonder about their intelligence.
What is now on the table really is going to put enormous pressure on the Sri Lankan government to do something. And the government is accused in this report, rightly or wrongly, of effectively having whitewashed this. I'm interested in knowing what is likely to happen next, because there has to be some form of truth and reconciliation exercise, doesn't there? I mean, to heal these wounds, you're going to have to take much more action than you take at the moment.
The first question is, how do you perform healing? Thanks to WikiLeaks, this is not my view, but it's the American ambassador's view. She wrote to Washington. Some of the people who there were trying to push for war crimes.
This is one of the leaked
documents.
Yes.
She said the Tamils in Sri Lanka are not interested in this. They want to move forward. But one of the reasons I explained to you the background is within the diaspora there are people who are pressing, and to me meeting New Zealand and Australian politicians.
That's your tour. I want to talk to these people about.
No, I'm more interested in the moderate Tamils, who I think are in the majority.
Yeah.
We are well aware that, again, WikiLeaks, David Miliband told the Americans, confessed to them rather, that his immense interest in Sri Lanka was because of electoral considerations. It is not correct for Western politicians to play with the lives of people in other countries simply because they want to be elected by a diaspora and because they're not willing to look at the truth.
But the question remains, what is going to be done?
I think the panel
how
is
are you going
positive.
to deal with this
The
scar?
positive thing about the panel is that because of it we realize we haven't told our story well enough. I've actually written, and I'll be happy to leave this with you.
Will your story be substantively different? Will it say that we didn't shell hospitals? We didn't shoot suspects when they were taken out of that?
It will certainly be different. For instance, the panel says we shelled every hospital in the Vanni indiscriminately. I was head of the Peace Secretariat, and one thing I resent is the assumption that other people care more about my people than I do. I used to get a report every morning from what was mentioned on Tamilnet, and if I found anything that seemed wrong, I would ask the military for a report.
Wouldn't it be wiser to have a commission of inquiry into this to get it dealt with properly?
Well,
if the government's position is sound as you say it is, it should do this.
What we have said is that to inquire you must have facts, and I think anyone who reads this report carefully, as I have done, and most people haven't, will realize it's short on facts, it's big on generalization.
Well, let's have a commission of inquiry to find out.
No, but
the facts on the
what
table.
would the commission inquire into? We have said, if you can give us concrete examples of these allegations you refer to, we will look into them. So far, 2 years have passed. 2 years have passed. We have had 3 areas in which there seems to be a concrete allegation. We have set up a commission. We've asked for evidence.
What do you expect will happen?
Well, there are 2 possibilities. One is that people will look at the evidence and realize that there still isn't what we call a prima facie case.
This is the government looking at this is the government commission that is looking at the evidence.
Yeah,
right?
But the government commission has to set up a prima facie case anyway.
So that's all there will be. There will be a government commission which will look at
any allegations that are brought up. But we also have to remember that these, as you know,
will that heal the wounds, though?
But there are no wounds in Sri Lanka. What you people don't realize is that the vast majority of Tamils, I mean, I work with the former combatants, 11,000 of them. They are delighted to have got away from this brutality that no one else protected them from.
And that's Professor Rajiva Wijesinha, MP, who's advisor to the President of Sri Lanka on reconciliation with Tamils.